Today on CountryCast, we are going to talk about the man who is known for getting down on the farm, and that is Mr. Tim McGraw. Tim McGraw has definitely had a successful career in country music, no doubt, but there have been some speed bumps for McGraw along the way. Kind of like the time he got arrested, which we will get to that a little bit later on. But first, let's take a look back into Tim's early days and what brought him to country music. Samuel Timothy Smith was born on May 1st, 1967 in Delhi, Louisiana. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you didn't just catch that, I said Samuel Timothy Smith. And in a moment, I will explain how Tim ended up with the last name McGraw. But anyways, McGraw, like I said, was born on May 1st of 1967 in Delhi, Louisiana, to parents Elizabeth Ann, who goes by Betty, and Frank Edwin Tug McGraw Jr. However, interestingly enough, McGraw did not learn who his biological father was until about the age of 11 years old. So what's that all about? Well, Tim's mother had married a man by the name Horace Smith after separating from Tug, which is where the last name Smith came from. Now, Horace Smith and Tim's mother married when he was around 7 months old and then divorced later when Tim was around 9. But Tim did believe that his biological father was in fact Horace Smith. However, at age 11, Tim found something very interesting in his mother's closet. And that something interesting was his birth certificate. And on the birth certificate, his father was listed as Tug McGraw. Now, Tim's mother eventually told him the truth about his father at the age of 11, and that is also when Tim first met his biological dad, the famed Major League Baseball pitcher, Tug McGraw. It would not be until Tim was 18 years old that he formed a stronger relationship with his dad. And in an interview with Country Weekly back in 1994, Tim had this to say about why it was at the age of 18 that the bond became stronger. Tim said, "I felt like I was a man now, and I needed to face him and try to work things out. Plus, it was just the right time to pursue it, to ask some questions." But after getting to know his father, it was during his time in college that Tim changed his last name to McGraw. And in the same interview with Country Weekly, Tim explained why he changed his last name. He said, "I took the name McGraw in college. There were a lot of legal reasons for doing it, but the main reason was because it's my name, my heritage." Pretty interesting backstory there on Tim. But now let's go ahead and move into what Tim was up to before making his way into country music. Tim was quite the sportsman himself, and when he was a kid, he even got athletic scholarships because of his talent. But McGraw instead chose to turn down those scholarships and focus on his pre-law courses at Northeast Louisiana State University. After not having much luck with pre-law, he then changed his major to public relations. But again, he saw that his grades were still not on the right track, so what did Tim do? Within his first year of college, he decided to buy a guitar and learn to play. Now, some of McGraw's musical influences actually came from his stepfather, Horace Smith. Tim grew up listening to some of country's greats like Charlie Pride, Johnny Paycheck, and the Possum, George Jones. Within a short period of time, Tim found his sound and started playing bars near Monroe, Louisiana. McGraw then decided it was time for him to move to Music City, Nashville, Tennessee. When McGraw arrived in Nashville back in May of 1989, he arrived with little to no experience in performing. But after playing gigs in the local bars and clubs for about a year and a half, he landed a contract with Curb Records. Once Tim landed that contract, he released his first album, which was self-titled, in the year of 1993. It unfortunately tanked and did not turn out the way McGraw had hoped. He joked with Country Weekly in an interview and said the album went wood, and added, "We couldn't give them away in a box. We tried to give $10 away with each purchase, but it didn't work." Well, thank God Tim didn't just give it up, because the following year, in March of 1994, he released his second album titled Not a Moment Too Soon. And the first song folks heard from on that record was the smash hit Indian Outlaw. Indian Outlaw may have been a huge break for Tim McGraw, but it came with some controversy as well. The song stirred up and received some heat from many who thought that the lyrics within the song were a bit offensive. Some of those lyrics were, "I'm an Indian outlaw, half Cherokee and Choctaw. My baby, she's a Chippewa." And according to a report by Billboard, the Cherokee Nation leader at the time, Wilma Mankiller, wrote into radio stations saying the song was crass, exploitative commercialism at the expense of Indians, and it promotes bigotry. Now, due to the Chiefs' letter, select radio stations throughout Arizona, Oklahoma, Nevada, and Minnesota chose not to play the song. Tim McGraw later explained that he meant no harm by it and that the choice of tribe names were used because they rhymed. But it would be Tim's next single from Not a Moment Too Soon, which continued his early success, and that was his hit song, Don't Take the Girl. And from there, well, the rest is history. McGraw has since released 13 studio albums and has had 67 singles. Several of his albums and singles have gone multi-platinum, several have also gone gold. I mean, we could sit here all day breaking down each and every record and single that has seen its fair share of success for McGraw. Same goes for the awards that Tim has received throughout his career. And just to highlight a few, McGraw received the ACM Award for Top New Male Vocalist back in 1994, and in 1998 and 99, he again won the ACM Award for Top Male Vocalist. Tim has even won the CMA Entertainer of the Year Award, which he won back in 2001. Oh yeah, and no big deal, right? But he's won a couple Grammys too. Tim's success has also followed him off of the stage as well. He ended up marrying one of country's biggest stars, Faith Hill. Now, how did Tim pop the question to Faith? It's kind of a funny story, actually. Tim and Faith were on tour together, and while they were in Montana for a show, that's when he proposed to Faith in his dressing room, which was located inside of a trailer. While McGraw was performing on stage, Faith wrote yes on the mirror inside of the trailer. Tim later laughed about his proposal in an interview with People magazine where he shared Faith's response to it. Faith said to Tim that night, "I can't believe you're asking me to marry you in a trailer house." Tim told People that he responded back to Faith saying, "Well, we're country singers. What do you expect?" Now, that may not be the most traditional way to propose, but hey, it worked out, and the two were married on October 6th of 1996 and have been going pretty strong ever since. Alright, so moving on. Let's talk about that arrest that I had mentioned earlier. Some of you may remember it, and some of you may have never heard about it. So here it goes. It happened back on June 3rd in the year 2000, and Tim wasn't alone because he was also with fellow country star Kenny Chesney. Both Tim and Chesney headlined a show in Buffalo, New York at George Strait's Country Music Fest. Now, after their performances, according to an article by Taste of Country, the local news at the time reported that Kenny Chesney asked one of the daughters of a sheriff's deputy who was working the event if he could ride his horse. Chesney then got on the horse and began to ride away when deputies ordered him to stop. According to the reports, Chesney ignored those orders. The sheriff at the time, Sheriff Gallivan, spoke with CMT on what happened next. Gallivan said in the interview with CMT, when the deputy went to remove Chesney from the horse, another deputy was going to assist. McGraw came and jumped the second deputy from behind, wrapped one arm around his neck, and was choking him. Now, I'm not suggesting he was trying to choke him, but he had him with his arm around his neck and he was holding on. Then that deputy needed assistance to get McGraw off. When the other deputy went to assist the one that McGraw had a chokehold on, that's when Russo jumped in. Russo being the management representative for Tim at the time. Gallivan continues and said, so there was a little scuffle that ensued, and both the deputies sustained very minor injuries. But because they had sustained the injuries, the law in New York State says assaulting a police officer is a felony regardless of the extent of the injuries, from a minor bruise to lacerations and broken bones. Sheriff Gallivan continued and said, following the incident, the people involved were taken back to a command post we set up when the stadium is in operation. From there, we took them maybe 10 or 15 miles to a town judge for arraignment. McGraw and Russo were arraigned before the local magistrate and released on bail pending further court appearance. Chesney was issued an appearance ticket and released at the scene. According to Taste of Country, all three were found innocent. Man, what a career it has been for Tim McGraw. But hey, continuing on, let's not forget that he's also starred in his fair share of movies as well. And two of the most notable, if you remember, are Flicka and The Blind Side. And also, before I forget, he's a licensed pilot. Tim McGraw sounds like he's pretty much a jack of all trades. But back to where it really matters with Tim, and that's the music. Again, he has had quite the career and has given us a lot of great country music over the years. Yes, one could argue his sound has changed, but let's face it, whenever you get a barbecue stain on your white t-shirt, you can't help but sing something like that. And 90s country was definitely a decade that will never be forgotten in country music, and remember, Tim McGraw was part of it. If you haven't had the chance to hear Tim McGraw's newest song, Way Down, featuring Shy Carter, you can check it out on all digital platforms, and hopefully we'll get a new album from Tim very soon. He recently spoke with Taste of Country, where he said his new album should be out next year. Guys, thank you all for tuning in. That will be it for today's video. If you are new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and turn those notifications on for breaking updates on your favorite country artist and all the news coming right out of Music City. Y'all stay country.